Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Today is Israel's 230th day waging war on Gaza. That's right. This is your Gaza update, and we want to make sure that you get all the information about Israel's war on Gaza. It's not the information corporate media gives you. It's not the analysis that mainstream outlets want you to have. We break every single detail down in a way that tells the truth and advances justice. And as always, we begin with the numbers. At least 35,800 people have been killed and 80,011 people have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. And of course, the death toll in Israel from Hamas's October 7th attack is 1,139, with dozens of people still held captive. With Israeli military incursions throughout Gaza and aid not getting in, the head of UNICEF warns that children are increasingly facing death from hunger and dehydration. The Israeli army intensifies its assault on Rafah as the International Court of Justice says that it will rule on Friday whether or not to order Israel to implement an immediate ceasefire, including in the besieged southern city. So between the issue of hunger and dehydration looming large and this issue of Rafah, which doesn't seem to go away and in fact becomes an even bigger international crisis, an international scandal, while simultaneously being a local problem that must be dealt with by the Palestinian people who are undergoing displacement, dislocation, and extraordinary amounts of violence and terror. All of this is a reflection of just how dire the situation is in Rafah. And the troops and the tanks are there, but they haven't even gotten as intense as Netanyahu wants them to be. Electricity to go off at Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah at any moment as fuel supplies have run out, along with healthcare for 1,300 patients. Again, electricity is a basic human need, but it's especially a need for a hospital. There's no electricity on the verge. There's supplies that have run out, and healthcare for 1,300 patients has gone away. This, again, is a humanitarian disaster. And for the people in Deir al-Balah, they don't care about platitudes. They don't care about right wing or left wing gesturing. They need care, and they need it now. The United Nations says displaced, quote, families living among the rubble after more than 800,000 Palestinians flee following Israeli forces attacking Palestinians. Again, this is, I'm looking at literally the updated information right now. Displaced families are not just fleeing Rafah to go to another area. They're not just leaving Rafah to go to the central part of the strip. They're not just going back to the north, which is what the media would almost have you believe. But many of these families are now living under the rubble. They packed into Rafah, as I always say, 250,000 people were supposed to be in Rafah. 250,000 people supposed to be there. 1.5 million were there at its peak a couple weeks ago. And now they're fleeing because of the invasion. But they have nowhere to go. And they're not just going to another place to be lonely and displaced and unhoused again. Many of them are now living under rubble. 800,000 people have left in an instant. That's going to create another humanitarian crisis. Speaking of which, U.S. President Joe Biden completely dodged a question about the International Court of Justice arrest warrants for Israeli leaders over the war on Gaza. It was the very first question by one of the American reporters who asked, quite simply, is Israel using starvation as a weapon of war? A very simple question, an easy question to answer. But your president, Joe Biden, tried to avoid it. So you know what the reporter did? His job. He asked it again. And Biden just didn't answer that part of the question. Now, what he did say was the White House believes the ICC doesn't have jurisdiction and that Hamas doesn't have any equivalence to Israel's leaders. Equivalency is not the point. The question is a war crime being committed? And by the way, the ICC absolutely has jurisdiction because Israel is committing the war crimes in Gaza. And guess what? Hamas is party to the Rome Statute. Hamas is party to the ICC. And they, therefore, have protection from anyone who commits war crimes in their country. You can't just say, well, I didn't sign the paperwork, so now, therefore I can commit war crimes. Anyway, the president went through his notes, ruffling through his notes like he didn't have any preparation for the question. He didn't respond about Israel using starvation as a weapon of war. And I think you're going to see very quickly what that means. American media is going to be like, The president just didn't understand. No, he understood. His defenders are going to say it was an unfair question. It was fair. He just didn't want to address a very clear question because he didn't want to implicate Israel. Anyway, the president or prime minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, says that recognition of the Palestinian state will, quote, contribute to peace. Will contribute to peace in the Middle East. Mr. Sanchez said, are Ireland, Norway, the International Criminal Court, the more than 140 countries that are in the United Nations General Assembly that voted for recognition of the Palestinians, are they all friends of terrorists? Of course not. That's his answer, not mine. He said the peace of the international order is based on rules of respect and compliance with human rights. Recognition of the Palestinian state will contribute to peace in the Middle East. We're on the right side of history. This is what Pedro Sanchez wrote. Why did he write this? Well, because 3 European nations yesterday, of course, sided with history and justice and said, let's have Palestinians actually be part of a state that's recognized. Israel went on a rampage and said, this is supporting terrorism. The US said, well, you know, everybody has a right to do it, but we think it's wrong. People like France said, hey, we're not ready, but it's not taboo to do. So Spain is weighing in the international course to say, hey, this is the right thing and it's the right time. And that's an important step in the right direction. Now, it might be too little too late, but let's not look a gift horse in the mouth either. Anyway, children in Gaza increasingly face death from hunger and dehydration, according to UNICEF. Children in Gaza, this is a quote, children in Gaza continue to pay a catastrophic price from blocked aid routes and intensified military operations and fighting in Rafah and beyond, which have paralyzed the only pediatric hospital in North Gaza able to provide nutrition services. The executive director of UNICEF, Catherine Russell, wrote that on Twitter. You can check it out for yourself. No child should die from starvation, she said. This is, again, something that shouldn't be challenging, right? More than 7 months into the Israeli war, lots of Gaza is in ruins, and most of the people who live there have been displaced because of the blockade. They've been displaced because of food, water, and medicine shortages. They are entering a space of extraordinary need, and the UN has made it clear that the stakes are this high, and yet the world continues to ignore Palestine. The world continues to ignore Gaza, but we won't. That's why we give you the Gaza update every single night. I want to thank you for watching. Make sure you check us out every single night here, right here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Tomorrow, sadly, will be day 231, and we will be on top of it. In the meantime, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, hit the join button to become a supporter of the channel as we continue to march toward justice.